And good afternoon, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio. And thank you for joining me on this fine and kind of rainy Saturday afternoon, at least in Pittsburgh. I hope you're all having a great Saturday out there or Sunday, whenever you happen to be listening to this podcast. And unfortunately, I'm not bulletproof. I thought I was on this as a solo podcaster because I had yet to experience defeat by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I never had to talk about that on the any of my brunch episodes. So this is the first. So and as always, I have a few topics I wanted to discuss. And before I do that, I wanted to encourage you, as always, to please check out our YouTube channel where we bring you shows like this one, The Steelers Hangover, which comes to you with me and Brian Anthony Davis the day after each Steelers game. There is Know Your Enemy with Jeffrey Benedict and Michael Beck. There's Steelers Preview with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, Brian Anthony Davis. Let's see, what am I missing? The Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. And that's among many on the YouTube platform, the YouTube channel. And there's also our audio platform. Where you could check out all of our podcasts. And we have some audio only podcasts on the audio platform, and those include the Retro Show, Touchdown Under, the Live Mic with Michael Beck, Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. So please check all those out. And also, one more thing, please check out the Behind the Steel Curtain website, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime there's an injury update, anytime there's any kind of transaction, anytime a player goes on to or comes off the COVID list, we'll have that for you. So please check that out. As we like to say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And welcome to everybody in the live chat. There's my man Ryan O'Toole, Steelers Pittsburgh, Jared Devil, David Briggs, Boo Bash. Thank you all for joining me. I can't wait to have a great show with you guys today. So that brings in my first topic, and that is the Steelers' first loss last Monday evening, I guess, afternoon, evening. It started at 5 o'clock Eastern time against the Washington football team. There will not be an undefeated season. There will not be a 19-0 season. The Steelers aren't going to catch the Dolphins for NFL supremacy as far as being only the second team in the modern era to win a Super Bowl with an undefeated record. The 72 Dolphins once again got to break out their champagne following the 23-17 loss to Washington. But that really is not that big of a deal. I mean, if you noticed, not too many people were talking much about the undefeated season. I mean, it was getting some play, and it was starting to build momentum, but people were talking more about the Steelers' deficiencies in the final weeks for their winning streak than anything else. So, I wasn't really that worried about the loss itself. I kind of figured at some point the law of averages would catch up to them, and with all the COVID stuff happening and their schedule being sort of with them being yanked around because of the COVID thing with the Ravens most recently, and having to play on Wednesday when they were supposed to play on the previous Thursday, and then playing on Monday when they were supposed to play on Sunday afternoon. You can kind of see, and again, with all the, with players like James Conner and Stephon Tuitt at least in the Ravens game, and Marquise Pouncey, the last two games, with those, players like that going on a COVID list, and then you have the injury factor with Dupree, and Steven Nelson missed last week's game. So, I mean, the Steelers were reeling a bit. So the fact they lost wasn't a problem. Just the fact how they lost really, was kind of disappointing. And if I missed some people, Ezra, my man Terry, T Money, Tom Vallejo, Alex Royos. So welcome to all those guys in the live chat. But the way they lost, to me, was kind of disappointing because it was another game where, they struggled a bit in the first half to get going offensively. They've been in a funk in that regard for a while, I think. But nevertheless, they had a 14-3 lead early in the second half. People like to give a lot of credit for Washington anyway to the things that happened at the end of the first half with the shenanigans with the field goal. Alex Smith, after getting sacked by Stephon Tuitt, he ran off the field with the football. The officials, Washington was out of timeouts. The officials stopped the clock to get a new ball in when they should have kept the clock rolling. So people point to that as maybe a turning point, but I don't really put much credence into that. I think you're still up 14-3, and early in that, Washington had the opening kickoff in the second half, and you have them backed up. It's 3rd and 14, and you let them get a first down on a wide receiver screen. I think it was to Cam Sims, and for my money, that was the turning point in the game. And I think after that, Washington went down. They scored a touchdown to make it 14-10. Washington actually, a play before they scored on Peyton Barber's 1-yard touchdown, they had a 4th and 1, and they kind of, you could tell the Steelers kind of diagnosed the play. Alex Smith was forced to throw it away, but there was a holding penalty on TJ Watt, and it was a holding penalty. I was talking to people on Twitter throughout the week, and they said it was a horse bleep call, but it wasn't like Watt was engaged with the running back. I forget who the running back was in that play. It wasn't like he was engaged with him in a block, and then the running back went into he went out to catch a pass. He was engaged with somebody else trying to get to the quarterback, and he could see the running back going out into a pass pattern, and he reached out and grabbed him. So it was definitely a penalty. So that was a big part of the game. And 14-10 at that point, Steelers you're still feeling good about things because obviously they hadn't lost up to that point over the first 11 plus games. But when it was 17-10, later in the game, in the fourth quarter, TJ Watt forced a fumble, and instead of just falling on it, he tried to scoop and score, which would have obviously probably put the game away. And I can't necessarily fault him for that. But that was another key part in that game. If he falls on the fumble there, Pittsburgh has the ball deep in Washington territory. Maybe they kick another field goal. Maybe they score a touchdown. Who knows? But I think those were some key moments. And of course, another key moment was earlier in the game in the first half when they had 5 shots from the 1 and they couldn't get it in. If you look at that last play on 4th and 1, when Benny Snell tried to dive over the top, Eric Ebron just whiffed on a block, or I'm not even sure if he knew he was supposed to block the edge on that play, and the guy he was supposed to block came in and sort of stopped Snell's momentum before he had a chance to even dive over the goal line. So that was one key moment. And then later in the game, when it was 17-17, about 5 minutes to go, Steelers had a chance to maybe kick a 45-yard field goal. Matthew Wright was their kicker last week because Chris Boswell had a hip injury. But instead of doing that, Mike Tomlin decided to go for it. And instead of running, and I don't really blame them for not running on that play because they haven't proven that they can get a yard on a run anytime in the recent past. They sent Anthony McFarland, the rookie running back, out on a wheel pattern, and he was open, but it wasn't the greatest throw by Ben. It wasn't a great recovery by McFarland, and it went incomplete. And I've had some time to think about that. And if I'm Tomlin at that point, and I realize right now that I've heard what some eyewitnesses have how they describe Wright, and at practice and in training camp when he's been with the Steelers over the past, I guess he's a rookie, that he had a hard time connecting from even 40, 45 yards away. I get that, but he made a couple extra points and he made a 37-yarder. So maybe he was feeling pretty good about himself by that point. And in my opinion, if you have a chance to take a lead late in the game, and I think there was like 4.5 minutes left, even if it's a slim lead, a 3-point lead, I think you do that. Anytime you have a chance to take a lead late or tie a game late, you do it. And I think they should have. Obviously, it's easier said than done. It's easier for me to say now because it didn't work. But I think they should have tried to go for the field goal. So that's that game. And that's the first thing I wanted to touch on. Steelers lost their first game of the year. Big deal, right? And it really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. You know, you're 11-0, you lose your first game, so what? It happens. Again, only one team has gone undefeated in the history of, or in the Super Bowl era, and yet there's always a Super Bowl winner at the end of the year, so it's not the end of the world. Having said that, I think it's time to admit that Pittsburgh is in a bit of a rut, in a funk, a slump, whatever you want to call it. They're in it, and you could see it coming over the previous few weeks before leading up to Monday's game, particularly on offense. I think that's the defense has been playing fairly well despite the injuries and everything, but the offense has been exposed a bit. You know, Washington said so. The Washington players, Chase Young and Montez Sweat, who tipped the pass that was intercepted by John Bostic that led to Washington's game-winning. Or I'm sorry, they were already up by 3 at that point. But right when Pittsburgh, when it looked like maybe they would have a chance to pull things out at the end in the final 2 minutes, Roethlisberger's first pass was tipped and intercepted by John Bostic, the former Steeler. And after that play, they were coming off the field screaming, "We knew it, we knew it, we knew it." You know, and I think they were saying some things afterwards to the press that they kind of knew what the Steelers were going to do, and the Ravens and some other teams had helped them out as far as watching film, being able to see how they defended Pittsburgh in previous games. So the question is, what do you do about the offense? Because it's clear that the offense is struggling. It's clear that the efficiency that was there early on, at least over the first 7 or 8, 9 games, has kind of deteriorated over the last 3 or 4, and you know, you can blame any number of people. Obviously, Randy Fichtner, the offensive coordinator, is a top of the list for many. And you know, I kind of make fun of people for that, because I've been, you know, ever since social media has been a thing, and that's like the late 00s. They've had 3 offensive coordinators, and you know, Bruce Arians, Todd Haley, and now Fichtner, and it's just funny because the people say the same things about each one of these guys. So I laugh about that. You know, too many bubble screens, too predictable. They can't get a yard on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. You know, no creativity. And I laugh at that because, you know, when you know, like now people are saying, "Oh, Todd Haley wasn't so bad," and I think people were kind of saying that about Bruce Arians after Haley left, or I'm sorry, after Haley was hired. But there's no question, you know, as much as I want to make fun of people for that, there's no question there's a problem with the offense, and Fichtner's the coordinator, and he deserves a lion's share of the blame, as does Ben Roethlisberger. You know, a lot of people say he's the offensive coordinator, and you know, that's probably really how it goes for most teams with a quarterback like him, a quarterback of that stature. But it really doesn't matter, because you know, they're not going to fire anybody. You know, I heard somebody use the example of the 08 Ravens and how they fired their coordinator late in the year and how that seemed to improve the offense. Okay, yeah, they did that, but picture the Steelers doing that. Can you picture them doing it? No, they're not going to do that. They're not going to fire their coordinator late in the year. So between Roethlisberger, Fichtner, obviously Tomlin, Matt Canada, who seemed to have more influence on the offense earlier in the year than he does now. I mean, what happened to all the jet sweeps that were seen, and all the motion that seemed to be a signature of this offense early in the year? Where has that gone? And you know, I mentioned in some recent shows that it looked like the opposing defenses had started to diagnose that play and stop it. Okay, fine, but it doesn't mean you can't run different plays out of that same formation. So why has that gone away? You know, why has all the motion gone away? Why is, you know, so how do you solve this problem? You know, I was pretty adamant recently that, you know, the short passing game was the way to go because it had been working. But guess what? I'm changing my mind a little bit because it's not working anymore. You know, doing this for so many years, people like to remind you of opinions you had 6 months ago, as if you can't change them. Well, now I'm changing it now. It's time to do something different. Doesn't mean you totally abandon the the short passing game, but you obviously have to find a way to counter what these teams are doing to the offense now, because that's what sports are all about. They're all about reacting and adjusting to what other teams are doing to you. It's like the movie Major League. Pedro Serrano, everybody knew he couldn't hit a curveball, right? That was a running theme throughout the whole movie. He could not hit a curveball, and they kept throwing him curveballs until he proved at the end of the movie, in the biggest game of the year, they could hit it, and he hit one for a home run. So teams know that the Steelers like to run the short passing game. They know they haven't been effective in the running game for the longest time. So how do you counter that? Do you open things up? Do you take more risks with Ben, moving him around in the pocket? He seemed to do a really good job last week when he got on the move. He seemed to be, Daryl Johnston mentioned several times throughout the broadcast, it looked like vintage Ben when he would move around and make plays. You saw I think it was like a 30-yard or 25-yard pass in the first half to Chase Claypool down to the 5. He rode out of the pocket and moved up in the pocket and completed that pass. That was kind of like vintage Ben. So what do? You have to find a way to work through this over the last month or so of the season before you head into the playoffs. Because they're going to make the playoffs, unless if they don't, it's going to be the greatest meltdown of all time. The NFL.com, the NFL Network will have to make a whole new show about greatest meltdowns of all time just to include the 2020 Steelers if they don't make the playoffs. So they're going to make the playoffs. The question is, how are they going to be running once they get in as an offense and as a team in general once they make the playoffs? So these are things that they have to figure out between over the final quarter of the season. So that's pretty much all I had to say about the offense for now. And that brings me to the close of the first half of part 1 of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. If you're watching on YouTube, please stay with me. If you're listening on an audio platform, please download part 2 of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. And welcome back. Welcome back to this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I'm your host, Tony Defio. I just want to say thank you for joining me. I just want to say thank you to some more folks that joined the live chat while I was rambling on in the first half of the show. There's Wes Hickok, Snowman. What else we have here? Reek NL, Bill Davis. Although I might have got you in the first half. I don't know. A lot of these names run together. And I'm seeing a lot of comments from people that the live chat isn't working. I wish I could help you there. I don't know what the deal is with that, but it's working for some people. So I assume maybe it's something on your end, folks. But I apologize for the technical difficulties if your live chat isn't working. Hopefully it clears up before the end of the show. Everything seems to be fine on my end. So, speaking of the offense and the short passing game, I've always been fascinated by the one stat, yards per attempt. I was about a decade ago. Actually, it was a decade ago when the Steelers were marching towards Super Bowl 45, and I was listening to a local sports show on the radio, and they had some expert on, and he was very adamant that the Steelers were going to go on a run in the playoffs because they were so healthy in the yards per pass attempt category. And sure they were. Ben, if I can find my numbers here, the 2010 Steelers, Ben averaged actually, no, they didn't. That was Aaron Rodgers. They won the Super Bowl, but Ben averaged, I want to say 7 yards per attempt that year, something like that. But that's around the average in the Super Bowl era. The average in the Super Bowl era is 7.68. So when they won Super Bowl 40, his average was 8.9. When they won Super Bowl 43, Ben's average was 7. I'm sorry, I have my numbers mixed up. I wrote down a lot of numbers for that. But the bottom line is the average in the Super Bowl era is 7.68, just a shade under 7.7, which coincides with Roethlisberger's career average in that category. And if you take away his the 6 quarters that he played last year, coming into the year, he was averaging 7.9 yards per attempt over the course of his career. And only 9 teams in the Super Bowl era have ever averaged less than 7 yards per pass attempt and won a Super Bowl. And this year, Ben is averaging 6.4 yards per attempt. That's obviously well below the average historically. So that's something to look to keep an eye on. I just think it's interesting. A lot of these stats, if you look at some multi Super Bowl winning quarterbacks throughout history, Terry Bradshaw in the playoffs in the 4 years that they won a Super Bowl, he averaged 9.1 yards per pass attempt. Joe Montana in the 4 years the 49ers won the Super Bowl, 8.8. Troy Aikman, 8.7. So historically, it's the quarterbacks that like to sling it and make big plays. Those teams they win Super Bowls. So maybe it's something Pittsburgh has to work on between now and the end of the season, and once the playoffs start, maybe they have to be a little bit more aggressive and make some adjustments. But the great thing about numbers is you can't look at them all as a whole. The interesting thing I found, I went into this research on Thursday with a certain opinion in mind, and I came out with a slightly different opinion. I still believe in the yards per attempt, and I think it's important. But when you look at those 9 teams that won the Super Bowl averaging less than 7 yards per pass attempt, 6 of them have occurred since the turn of the century. And Tom Brady, Mr. Super Bowl, as you know, he's won 6 of them. He's averaged 6.96 yards per pass attempt in the playoffs in the Super Bowl era. In the 6 years that he's won a Super Bowl, his postseason yards per attempt is 6.96. You look at Peyton Manning, the 2 Super Bowls that he's won, his postseason yards per attempt was 6.35. Eli was 7.35, which is a little bit below the average. So I guess the point is Pittsburgh doesn't necessarily have to be more aggressive and get their yards per pass attempt up. It could come down to execution. We know about the drops the last 2 weeks with the receivers. Eric Ebron's been a big culprit. Deontay Johnson, even Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington's dropped his share. Not as many as the other guys. He hasn't had the same opportunities. Even Chase Claypool has dropped his share of passes. So it could be just a matter of execution. But I think you do see where they probably are going to have to change some things up and open some things up, because even when they catch passes, whether they catch them or drop them, it seems like there's 2 or 3 defenders around these guys, because they're stacking the line of scrimmage now, kind of like what they did last year when Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges weren't great threats in terms of making big plays downfield. So, I think in some form or fashion, they're going to have to open some things up and keep these defenses honest. So that's that category. The yards per pass attempt, I hope I was pretty clear on that. I'm not much of a stats guy, so trying to explain them it's much easier for me in writing than it is verbally to explain them. But it is interesting, and the solace we can take from that is just like with takeaways. The overall average for Super Bowl winners, as far as their defense is taking the football away, is like 36. But if you look at recent years, with it being harder and harder to take the football away because more teams are adopting the West Coast, the dink and dunk kind of offense, you see the average for most Super Bowl winners now is closer to 24, 25 than it is to 36, 37. So anyway, I just think that's a pretty neat stat. And I don't know why it's so important, but it clearly is, and it has been for the majority of the Super Bowl era. The Chiefs averaged 8.3. Patrick Mahomes, 8.3 yards per attempt last year, which is 2 yards more than Roethlisberger's averaging right now. So it's pretty interesting. And That brings me to another part of the Steelers' funk that really maybe that they have no control over, and that's injuries. And heading into Sunday's game with the Bills, they're going to be missing Joe Hayden, who's out with a concussion, Robert Spillane, who has a knee injury, Vince Williams, who's on the COVID list again for the second time, and obviously that you add those guys to Bud Dupree and Devin Bush. And if I'm missing anybody, wow. If I'm missing anybody, that's even scarier, because that's a lot of people to be missing from your defense. And I've been struggling with this for the last week or so, ever since these injuries and everything started to mount with this team, especially on defense. Is it more important to get the number one seed, or is it more important to be healthy? And as historically significant as the bye has always been, and the number one seed is to winning a Super Bowl, and I think it still is, obviously. And I've waffled back and forth on this. I think it might be more important right now for them just to be healthy by the time the playoffs start. Obviously, you want to be on a roll by the time the playoffs start. You want to get rolling again, and be running on all cylinders on both offense and defense. And as I said, they got to get the offense figured out, but you got to get healthy on. At one point last week, both Hayden, who left in the second half with an injury, and Steven Nelson were out of the game. So you had your top two corners out of the game. You had your new starting one of your new starting inside linebackers who had been playing well, and Spillane out of the game. So I mean, it was a really tough situation for them, and they're going to have Nelson back tomorrow, and that's great. And they're going to have James Conner and Marquise Pouncey back on offense. They're both off the COVID list now, so that's good. But I think if I had to choose at this point, I would have to go with health over getting that number one seed. I still think it's important. I think they're going to do everything they can to get it. They're not going to stop trying to get it. But if I had to choose between the two, I would certainly go with health, because as I've mentioned on last week's show, and as I wrote in a recent article, they've had so many critical injuries on the eve of the playoffs under Mike Tomlin. I mean, you can go all the way back to 2007, 2011, 2014, 15, 16, 17. It just and here we are in 2020, and they're still here. And they're still having their share of problems with injuries. Spillane, it looks like he's going to be back maybe in a week or so, certainly before the end of the regular season. So that's great news. I mean, you're talking about going into Sunday's game with Avery Williamson as the only inside linebacker with experience. He's a veteran. You feel safe and comfortable with him, but he's only one guy. So you're going to have to, obviously, you're going to use a lot of sub packages, I guess. And Marcus Allen can play linebacker, and dime linebacker. And Antoine Brooks has been activated, I believe. So the rookie safety out of Maryland. So they're going to have to be creative. And Gilbert, I don't know if he's activated yet. He might not be. He's been dealing with an injury. He's been on the short-term IR. So, it's going to be a challenge for them. But it's, again, this is why it's great to be 11-1, and you can sort of get healthy and try to be at your best by the time the postseason rolls around. And that brings me to my last topic, and then I'll take some time to answer some questions. And that topic has to do with the Buffalo Bills, who the Steelers play on Sunday Night Football. A normal game, a normal time. I can't believe it. It's weird. I'm not even kidding. And I don't know what this says about me and my priorities in life, but I actually had a dream. I shouldn't even say this. I had a dream that the game was moved to Monday night. And you can't really blame me for that. I mean, it's happened so much, but hopefully that they get the game in on Sunday and everything goes smoothly. But the Bills are going to be a challenge. There's no question. I mentioned the injuries on defense. They're going to be missing their share of players tomorrow. And Josh Allen is a handful. I didn't realize how good of a year he was. I knew he was having a good year, but I mean, 3,400 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 322 yards on the ground. He's a beast in that regard. And he's a lot like Lamar Jackson, except he's bigger and stronger, but he's a handful. And, he's not going to be easy for them to defend. So it's going to be interesting to see how they answer him, and especially missing two of their two starting inside linebackers, and missing Bud Dupree, who was so integral to that defense until he got hurt, and missing Joe Hayden. So how are they going to respond to that, and what are they going to? I think they can. If they have worked on some things, if they have figured some things out on offense, I think they can move the ball in Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo, they don't have the defense that they did last year. They're not. I think they're, I want to say, 21st overall. Certainly not great in any one category that I've seen. They have some playmakers in the secondary. Trey White, obviously, who terrorized Duck Hodges last year. So, he's obviously a baller and somebody they're gonna have to watch out for. And they get after the quarterback pretty good. But it's gonna be a challenge. Buffalo, they're 9-3, but they're basically a Hail Mary by Kyler Murray away from being 10-2 and being right in the race for the number 1 seed. And if they win on Sunday, they will be in the race for the number 1 seed, right? They'll be 10-3. Pittsburgh will be 11-2. Who knows what KC is going to do? So, yeah, it's a big game. And I think the Steelers, even though they're 11-1, they have a lot to prove in this game, because a lot of people have already pulled out the shovels and are ready to bury them. If you listen to talk radio, if you follow social media, guys like Mark Madden, Colin Cowherd, Adam Shine, the list goes on. People are just looking for a way to bury Pittsburgh. For whatever reason, I know what it is. It riles people up, and it's kind of like a verbal clickbait, if you will, because they know the Steelers have a huge following, and anything anybody says in a negative sense, people are going to react to it. But who cares about any of that? The bottom line is Pittsburgh has a chance to shut a lot of people up, at least temporarily, if they can go out and perform well in this game. And I don't know if they're going to win. They're 2-point underdogs at the moment, last time I checked anyway. But I think they're going to put on a good game. This is the kind of game that Mike Tomlin teams normally perform well in. It's a Sunday night game, national television, big time opponent. They have their backs against the wall a little bit. So I look for them to put on a good show. And I think if they can walk out of Buffalo with a win, that will go a long way, especially if it's an impressive win. It will go a long way in restoring their confidence if they've lost any confidence. I don't know. I mean, they're human beings. I mean, they have been struggling, and they are depleted a bit, on the roster. So it would be only natural, human nature, for them to be lacking some confidence right now. But if they can get a win against a legit contender, I think it'll go a long way in making a lot of people feel better. So I'm looking forward to Sunday's game. Obviously, I feel a lot better about this game now than I did after Monday's game. When you have time to think about things and process things, and the positive meter usually is pointing up by the end of the week, until time runs out on the season. So I'm looking forward to Sunday's game. And with all that being said, I will open things up to some questions. I thank you all for listening to me ramble. Let's see who else we have here in the live chat. We have Alan Johnson, DJ2, Jared Double. I don't know if I got you before, but if not, welcome. Paul Boback, Jason Flores. So let's see what we have here as far as comments. See if I missed any earlier. All right. Here's one from Alan Johnson. Do you think Ben can still throw down the field with accuracy? Actually, I do. The problem that I see with Ben, and if you saw the play to it wasn't really a deep pass, but if you saw the play to Claypool when he was on the run, and he hit him down at the 5-yard line, that's a good example. I think the problem with Ben, and I've said this several times, with the deep ball, is he's just not. In most cases, he's not waiting that extra half of a second that most quarterbacks wait before they unleash a deep ball. He's throwing it as quickly on a deep pass as he is on a short pass. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's if he knows something we don't about the offensive line. The line has certainly been criticized a lot lately because of the running game, essentially. I mean, Ben hasn't been sacked in 5 games, but the running game's been atrocious. And many people are starting to speculate, if the pass blocking would be more atrocious if Ben wasn't getting rid of the football quicker. So I think you can still throw. I don't know how you would lose. Throwing deep for a quarterback, I think that's the easiest pass to be accurate on, because it's just a matter of leading your receiver and hitting him in stride. So I don't know how, if his arm strength is still there, which it looks like it is, I don't know why he would suddenly lose that at the age of 38. But I don't know. I've never played football for 17 straight years and thrown thousands of passes, so who knows? Let's see here. Here's one from Raymond Massey. Welcome, Raymond, to the live chat. How bad will we miss Williams on defense? I think they're going to miss him. I mean, this is a savvy vet who, was a leader on the team and is a leader on the team. I think they're going to miss him. I'm comfortable with Avery Williamson. If it was Avery Williamson and a younger guy, I wouldn't feel so bad. But Avery Williamson and Marcus Allen and Antoine Brooks is, sort of hybrid inside linebackers. That's a little bit more concerning. But yeah, I think they're gonna miss him. Can they make up for him? Yeah, but possibly. But there's no doubt that they're gonna miss a guy like that. I mean, especially when you're so thin to begin with. Here's a comment from DJ2. This week is huge. Even if we squeak out a win, we need to turn around our downward trend. Any win does that. I agree. And here's a question from DJ2. He's pretty active. Tony, why can't Vance get a target? Vance and Juju may be the most sure-handed targets on the team and get like 50% of what Ebron and DJ get. Well, actually, Vance McDonald he has a reputation just like Ebron for drops. So I don't know if he's the most sure-handed. Why isn't he getting more targets? I don't know. Maybe they're keeping him in more to block now because of the problems they've had trying to run block. I don't know. I mean, they've had some problems on the line this year with injuries and obviously the COVID issue with Pouncey. Wisniewski was lost. DeCastro was down for a number of weeks, and he hasn't been playing well at all this year, even since he's been back. A lot of people were speculating that he should be replaced by Dotson. That's how bad DeCastro has been playing. So I think it might be. I don't know. I don't know why he hasn't, but it is pretty curious. Like you see people like Claypool, for example, his snaps have decreased in recent weeks. Last week he was in 44% of the snaps, which was pretty puzzling considering I think he's the most potent weapon they have on offense this year as a rookie. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But I do agree about Juju having surer hands. Although he did have an early drop last week too. Let's see what else we have here. Bynard Johnson has a question. Do you think receivers dropping balls can be solved in a week? Well, I mean, I don't even know how you solve it, honestly. I mean, I think it's just a matter of, these guys are veterans, at least some of them anyway. Well, I shouldn't say that they're not veterans. Ebron's a veteran. Johnson isn't. But I was listening to Arthur Moats, and I'm just full disclosure, I heard this on the radio. He was on, I think it was Mark Madden the other day. Maybe it was another show. But they were asking him, what's the deal with these drops? Why can't these guys finish these catches? And according to him, and he watches a lot of film, he's of the belief that these guys are looking downfield to make a play after the catch before they have the ball secured. So maybe it's just a matter of securing the catch and then taking off to make some yards downfield. That could be, it could be as simple as that. It's because once you get rolling and have more confidence in yourself, it's easier to continue to be a more sure-handed receiver. As somebody who's played a lot of flag football, I went years without really dropping any passes. And then once I started dropping them, it was in my head, and I was like, I'm You can ask my uncle, who was my brother-in-law. They were the quarterbacks on these teams, and they could tell you. I went from never dropping anything to dropping everything. And the reason why, a decade later, I could tell you it's because I was thinking about it too much. So once they maybe worry about, I think they have to worry about securing the catch first and then making a play downfield. And once they start getting in a rhythm that way, then that might be the way to do that. I mean, other than the jug machine and just reps and reps and reps, I don't know how else you solve it. Mike Tomlin talked about replacing the players who were dropping passes with the ones who can. Well, who's not dropping passes on this team right now? It seems like everybody's dropping passes. I named just about everybody except Vance McDonald, and he's not even getting any targets. So, I don't know. Here's a $5 super chat from Snowman. Do you think the Steelers will use more play action pass? Actually, I do not, because Ben seems to loathe that part of the game. He doesn't seem to enjoy the play action pass very much. And plus, I think I read a stat that 77% of their sorry, I thought I'd missed the super chat, but that was already one that Snowman sent in. I think 70% of their plays come out of the shotgun. And if you combine that with the fact that they're just not running the ball well, I don't think he's going to play action much. It just seems like he doesn't, ever since he became more of the true leader of the offense, in the Todd Haley era, when he really started to, you could tell he had more of a say and he matured. It seemed like he just really does not like the play action pass, or he doesn't like taking the snap under center anymore. He just does not like that. So I don't think they're going to run more play action passes. And even if they did, I'm not sure if anybody would honor it because they're just not running the ball effectively right now. And here's a good question. Yeah, where has the no huddle gone? Bring it back. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure, but that seems to be when they're at their most effective, when they're just running the no huddle. I don't know. Maybe they're trying some things. I've heard it speculated. I've seen it speculated. Some people, like Jeffrey Benedict and people, they're of the belief, at least partially, that they're just trying to protect Ben and keep him upright because they know how valuable he is and they know how much they're going to need him. And they know if they lose him, then any chance at winning a Super Bowl is out the window. So maybe it's just a matter of, this quick passing game, getting through the regular season, and then come the playoff times, it'll be like Rocky II. Remember Rocky II, the championship fight where he switched to right hand to a righty. He fought right-handed for the first 14 rounds, and he switched back to a southpaw in the 15th round. Maybe that's what we're going to see in the playoffs. Maybe we're going to see them, or at least down the stretch. I think they have to do it before the playoffs because you want to get continuity. You want to get these guys used to running these different plays and being more aggressive. But certainly by the end of the year, maybe they'll switch some things up. All right. Yeah, I agree, Snowman. It would help to get the play action pass would help to get the safeties to cheat up. But if they're not even running out of the if he's not taking any snaps under center, then they're not gonna respect it anyway. And if they're not running the ball effectively, they're not gonna respect it. They're always gonna think that Ben's gonna pass because he passes. The last 2 weeks, I think he's averaged 51 passes per game. So, even if he fakes it to out of the shotgun snap, even if he fakes a run, if he fakes like a play to Connor or Snell or whoever, they're still I think they're gonna key on the pass first because that's what he likes to do. That's what he's gonna do the majority of the time anyway. All right. Here's one from Thanks Mean Joe. That's from the 1979 Coca-Cola commercial. That's a great reference. I love that name. It's growing pains. So many young guys that are not quite polished yet. They'll get better. Tomlin just needs to keep the pressure on. They'll come around. Yeah, well, it is a young receiving corps. I misspoke earlier when I said they were veterans other than Eric Ebron. I guess Juju's a veteran at this point, even though he's really young. He's been in the league for 4 years. Yeah, it's just a matter of, it's the fundamentals. If you're looking to run before you secure the catch, that's just it's just maybe a matter of inexperience, a matter of over eagerness. There's really no excuse for a guy like Ebron though, as far as dropping the ball, looking to run before he secures the catch. So if they can get that cleaned up, I think that'll go a long way. Here's a naysaying comment from Knight Rider. I know it's just one loss, but I have this feeling that the walls are falling. Well, again, they're certainly, based on the last month or so, they're trending in the wrong direction. I mean, I mentioned the Super Bowl era, the yards per attempt, and how you can't look at it as a whole. You have to look at the more recent numbers, and you can say the same thing about the Steelers' performance. I mean, yeah, they're 11-1, but you really can't. The bottom line is how they're playing right now, and over the last month or so, they have not looked that great, to be honest. I remember reading this quote from Chuck Noll. Obviously, it was many years later, not in the moment, because I was a little kid, but he was in the lead up to Super Bowl 14 against the Rams. He was they were asking him about the Rams 9-7 record, and at that point, the Rams had the worst record ever for a Super Bowl entrant. And he said, well, you can't really look at their overall record. You have to look at how they're playing as of late. And at one point in the season, they were 5-6. And obviously, by the time they reached the Super Bowl, they were a 6-1 football team. So that's basically how you had to. And they played like it in that game. They really gave Pittsburgh a run for its money. So, I'm a little more optimistic. I think they can turn this thing around. But yeah, we have seen this in recent times with the December collapse last year and the year before. Last year was a little bit more excusable because of the quarterback situation, but yeah, I mean they've had some collapses the last couple of years. If that happens again this year, I mean, they're still going to make the playoffs, it would seem. I mean, the odds are so stacked against them not making the playoffs. But even if they do, I mean, what kind of team are they going to be once they get there? Are they just going to back into the playoffs and suddenly turn it on? I don't think so. So, I don't have that impending feeling quite yet, but I didn't a couple of years ago after the Broncos loss, and look how that season turned out. I didn't last year after that Bills loss, and they missed the playoffs. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And on that note, I am going to call it a day. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for the questions. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the $5 super chat, Snowman. And thank you everybody in the live chat for joining me. If you're listening to me on the audio platform, please check out all of our audio podcasts and check out all of our podcasts, period. Check out Behind the Curtain. Check out the YouTube channel. Check out these guys in the live chat. They're awesome. Enjoy Sunday's game, and I will talk to you on Monday on the Steelers Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis. Until then, go Steelers.